This podcast provides a platform for our guests to express their own personal views and opinions. Some or all of these views and opinions may not be shared by Ben and/or Yoel.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast,
the podcast where we highlight stories of dads on the other side of divorce
to inspire and give strength to dads going through it.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Yoel.
Welcome back to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, find us on social, Too Dad to Quit on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now on TikTok. We hope to hear your stories, share your stories, and please reach out. We want to hear from you with your comments, with your questions, and we're really, really excited to keep hearing from all of our listeners. This week, we hosted Damian Andrews. He's a veteran of the Australian Army. He is a philanthropist, a CEO of a foundation. He is a divorcee and a father of a 14-year-old boy. And we had a wonderful discussion ranging from his relationship with his father growing up, his parents' divorce, his Army service, and really diving into relationships, a lot about relationships and raising your child to be confident. It was I've never met somebody that was so mission driven. And you'll hear on the podcast that he's got missions for his own life, for his house, his family's traditions, missions left and right, and how he got to get that in his character, which was something that was a huge value of his family and his father. And there was, he says his father just never got tired, and he took that into his life. And it was really, really nice to hear and how that kind of spread into all aspects of his life.
Yeah. And something that stands out for me is that he's obviously just meeting him. He's such a likable person. And he talks about how he's, raised his son to ask himself, do you like yourself? He's very intentional about, making sure one understands his own self-worth, whether that's for his son, whether that's for himself. And it really comes across in the podcast. I found Damian to be just a super likable guy. He also talked about not taking oneself too seriously. He has a great sense of humor. He was a lot of fun to talk to, and super impressive guy. I mean, he's doing so much. He also talks about giving back, and he's doing so much for the community at large. We get into that as well. And we also talked about relationships, which is a favorite topic of mine, as you know, Ben, and we got into that. So we really covered a wide array of topics, as we usually do in the podcast. Damian was a super likable guy, very well-intentioned person, as you said, very conscious of what he's doing and how he's raising his son. He's being there as a dad. He's making time for his own life. And he was somebody that I really learned a lot from, and I'm very confident our audience will as well.
Today we have Damian Andrews. He is a veteran of the military, having enlisted with Australia's Special Air Force Regiment, which is a special forces unit with the Australian Army. Following his Army service, Damian obtained a bachelor's degree in commerce and in business, and specializes in corporate recovery, facilitating turnarounds for distressed companies. Damian is also a philanthropist, including such roles as CEO of Family Peace Foundation, aimed at preventing domestic violence. Damian is also a divorcee, a proud father of a kind and responsible 14-year-old boy with whom he maintains a close relationship. Damian is a passionate believer in the global community, and among many other achievements, helps divorced fathers gain access to their children in the court system. So we are honored to have you here. To all transparency, Damian actually reached out to us and wanted to see if we would help him share his message. And we were more than happy to do so. And we're really, really excited to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's really wonderful. And You're correct. I do a few things, but most of all, I'm a proud dad, and I was always going to be a proud dad. I was never going to have a situation where I couldn't be with my son, and we have a quite amazing relationship. But similar, I'm very lucky that I have an amazing relationship with my dad as well. It wasn't always that way, but they say the child doesn't become, or the boy doesn't become a man until his father dies. And metaphorically, my dad
Wow.
died over a packet of chips, and so he's still alive, but metaphorically,
Yeah.
it was over a packet of chips. He died, and we've had an amazing relationship ever since as well. So it was rocky there at times, but yeah. So I'm kind of lucky in both sides. I have an amazing son relationship with him, and an amazing relationship with my dad and in being a son as well.
Wow. And talking about your father, we'd like to always get kind of a background story of, what kind of made you the person that you are. Everyone has their own stories of, they do this and they do that, or this is important to them because. So we'd really like to hear kind of, your background around that.
Yeah, for sure. My dad, my family upbringing was pretty traditional. I'm Polish, Ukrainian, and a little bit of Russian. So I'm kind of, maybe I could be the peace talks at the moment, the facilitator for that, because I've got all three in me. But both my grandmothers were Polish. My granddad on my mum's side was Ukraine, and my granddad on my dad's side, he was Polish with a little bit of Russian in him as well. His dad was Russian. And so we had a traditional growing up. My mum decided, although my mum was fiercely a very independent woman, she was actually the first post World War II. She was the first female apprentice motor mechanic in Australia, and she
Wow.
had to change states to go and do that. So she was a fairly fiercely independent woman. Which was great. Great to have that as part of my upbringing as well. But when she had children, she said, I want to be at home with the children. And so my dad went to work. He worked, so as I remember, he worked shift work. So he worked in a power station. He was a controller in one of the power stations. So there was times where he was there during the day, and I get to spend time with him, and other times where he was away at work, and he did things like he had some of the social sporting things that he attended with his mates, and he went off to some. I remember he went off to some camps with them. So he'd disappear for a weekend or so, and then come back. But as far as the relationship goes, it's my dad and I, it was certainly when I was younger, I have some really, really fond memories of our relationship. I remember working out with my dad. Actually, I don't. Well, to first clarify, I don't ever remember my dad being the authoritarian in the house as far as parenting goes. That was always my mum's job, and she was always the one yelling and with the wooden spoon to correct things that weren't behaving. And I didn't behave a lot as well. I was a very energetic child, but I remember working at the back with my dad where he was building a new shed and the foundation for the shed, and I was getting tired as I was shoveling, and I looked at my dad and said, Dad, I'm getting tired. Don't you get tired? And he looked at me, and I remember this very distinctly. And he goes, Nah, don't get tired, son. And and I was like, I don't know how that psychologically affected me, but I'm a bit of a workaholic now, and it's like I just keep pushing through until 2-3 in the morning, like Yoel is doing at the moment.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say Ben's the workaholic here, but yeah, we're all trying. Yeah.
So yeah, and I remember a couple of things. There was a couple of close connections. So it wasn't always, Dad wasn't always there, but when he was there, he was present. And so I remember at the front playing cricket on the footpath in the front yard, and I remember another time where he was chasing me around the yard and trying to run away from that. And I have a traumatic memory as well, where he had back in the day, he had a radio controlled car or remote controlled car. It's one of those ones where you had the controller, but it had a cable attached to it. And it was like a 1950s Formula One car. I remember it distinctly. It was white, but it made a lot of noise. And as a young child, I was sensitive to noise. And he had a lot of fun chasing me around the house with that. And I remember I was running away from it, and I ran into the bedroom, and I stood on the bed, and as a dad does, he's laughing away at it, but I'm freaking out. And I remember doing the same thing to my sons.
Father
But
like
it,
son.
yeah, exactly. But it was, so I had that, I think, and it was had some really good experiences as well. My dad was always one that helped out in the community. So we did things with the local footy club, like for example, when they had Christmas and preparing for the Christmas parties, he would bring home the lollies to build the lolly bags that Santa would give out at the Christmas parties. So we, as a family, would prepare these lolly bags. Which, as a kid, you're always waiting because when there was odd lollies left off, somebody got to eat them. So it was kind of
Right.
like that was really exciting, and also too, I got to hang out with my dad, with his social friends as well. So he would play golf, and so I started playing golf, and actually he brought me along to with his mate. So where he came and I would play golf with him, but then, and this is I was, I don't know, 12. So 12 or 13, hanging out with these grown adults. And then I would go off, so they form pairs and go off, and I would actually form a pair, or form, not a quad, it should be, and go off with other people. Then initially was going with my dad, but then went off with other people, and then we'd all meet back up at the clubhouse afterwards, and they'd have a beer and I'd have a soft drink. And so as part of that, so I got to experience, through my dad, I got to experience some of that, and it's a similar sort of thing now I do with my son. My son comes to, when I play poker with my friends now, my son comes along and plays that, and he's been doing that since 13, and he's been holding his own against the sledging side of things, been
Right. No,
been
it's really
hanging it on some
special.
of the guys.
It's really special because some fathers are like, nope, that's my time. You stay at home. I'm going out. I'm going to play golf. I'm going to play poker. I'm going to do whatever I want. And it sounds like, your father passed this really nice thing over to you to share with your son.
Yeah.
Because I hope when you were a kid, I don't know if you appreciated it, but it sounds like you grew into that appreciation for sure.
Yeah, definitely. As a young kid, I don't know if I consciously appreciated, but I think any child has that connection with both parents, but certainly, from my perspective with my dad, I had just, and it wasn't, I said, he did take his time for himself. He wasn't always, there whenever I wanted. So it wasn't like, it was like, I'm going off and doing my thing. He'd go to the footy club,
right,
after work or whatever, and it wasn't like that was our life constantly. He was always there. He wasn't, but when he was there, he was present,
right.
And I think that's what made the difference. So
right. And you created those moments, which is really important.
Yeah. And it's the same with my son. I mean, he does a lot of things, and there's sometimes where when I'm with him, I'm really present, but there's other times where he'll come to me and want to do something. And especially when he was younger, I'd say, this is my time. I need to do this. I'll come back to you later, go and play or do whatever. And then I'll address your question. So it was very set boundaries. And I think that's important. You've got to have time for yourself. But also too, you want to create that connection. I think that's partly why I've never yelled at my son, never had to. And I've just said, I've set the boundaries from a very early age, saying this is how it's going to be.
Right. And how many siblings do you have?
Siblings? There's 4 of us. So I have a sister that I grew up with. She was just on a year younger than me. And then there's another 2, so another sister and then a brother, which, good question. I don't pay attention to ages that much, but my other sister's about 7 years younger than me, and my brother's 9 years younger than me. That's correct. Yeah. So I had a lot of close time with my sister.
With your father. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just saying, as the older one, so I guess that's how you got more time with your father also.
Maybe. I hadn't thought about that. So I don't know. Obviously, I got more time because I'm a year older, but whether it was, in the scheme of things was the case. But then when I was in year 7, so roughly around the age of 12, 13, I think it was 13, my parents split up, and my mum moved away to the city. because we were in a country town. So, and I didn't notice this at the time, but in now doing some of the things that I do, I kind of think back about it. And we literally didn't see our dad for about 12 months. And although I guess partly too, that didn't seem that unusual, I guess, because when I was in grade 6, we went on a holiday to my mum's brother lived in South Australia with his family, and we would regularly go there for holidays. But when we were would have been just finished grade 5, because I was going into grade 6. We went for a holiday with them in South Australia, in Adelaide, which is an 8-9 hour drive away, if you're driving. And for whatever reason, we tried to do a child swap. So maybe I wasn't a good child. So their oldest child went back with my mum and dad, and I stayed in South Australia with them. So for a whole school term, for 4 months, it was a
Oh, wow.
3-term year back then. I stayed in South Australia with them, went to school there, that kind of thing. And their daughter went and stayed with our family. So it was a great experience. It was a long camp, shall we say, but I got to do lots of really cool things and hang around with it. I'm not sure how that came about. I'm pretty sure one of us would have suggested it, one of the kids, and the parents have thought about it and gone, oh, yeah, why not? And so I had this time. So that there was that's 4 months I wasn't with my dad. And then I said, when my parents did split up, we lived in the city, with my mum for a year. And so my dad, and I didn't fully appreciate this when I was talking about it with my dad initially. But we were talking about, separating, and when I separated from my partner, who's the mother of a son, we was talking with my dad about that, and he mentioned about back then he was told by friends, don't worry about it, just always be there, the kids will come back to you. Fortunately, I was never in that position, but it was a good reminder that the connection and the bond that you have with your parents is pretty unbreakable, if you're constantly there with them, or constantly in that frame of mind to be there for them when they are there.
Or and I don't know if you want to talk about it, but how did that did you see it coming? Was it a shock? How did that affect you, your parents splitting up?
No, I mean, as a child, never didn't really think about those kind of things. I mean, my parents had there was, it's hard to think that I mean, I know there was a lot of arguing there, and but I didn't see it coming. And there was a lot with, and there's a lot of studies to show this, that the kids generally take on the blame for when parents don't get along. And that there are some good arguments that it's not a good thing to stay in a relationship that's not working for the kids, because you're hurting the kids. But there's a lot of studies that you can read on that for people that want more information on that. And I did carry a lot of that for a long time, where there was a lot of blame that I carried for my parents' behavior, and that's quite common for kids to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you reconnected with your father after 12 or after that year.
Well, that was and that was an interesting time as well, because and I was a teenager, and teenagers tend to be a little bit rebellious and do that kind of want to do their own thing. So having my mum wanted us to be around our dad, so she moved back, which was a good thing. So she had that intention, so that was a good thing. It wasn't sort of something that had to be mandated by a court or anything like that, which some people experience. So she did want us to be around our dad, so we moved back to the same town. But then, it's being a teenager and wanting to be. So whenever I got upset with one parent, I just moved to the other parent. So I just went backwards. And there was times there where being as a parent, my dad had what he wanted was the best interest for us, and obviously there was some, well, not obviously, but there was some issues with a teenager that's gone through a breakup, that has some self-worth issues, which I had at the time, and a bit of rebelliousness, and just all that rolled into one. So the communication with my dad wasn't always great. Instead, I don't remember my dad yelling a lot, if at all. I'm trying to think of, I know he must have. I think there must have been times when he got frustrated and yelled, but I don't remember that. It's, yeah, so and there was this always a distance between us from the breakup onwards. And there was two things that kind of brought us back together much later. After I'd done my time in the army, I got out, and I was working in the northwestern Australia in the mine sites up there. I went up there to do some construction work and then continued to work in the mines. And my dad was going through a bit of a self-loathing period where he was unhappy with his life, still living in the fact that the marriage didn't work, and things that had flowed on from that, and he was just going, and I think I was being selfish. I got a bit upset with that. Well, I just didn't want to listen. It's like, I've had enough. I'm not listening to your shit anymore, was my thinking. But I approach it from this way. I thought, how am I going to deal with this? I don't want to be listening to this anymore, but I need to help him somehow. So I wrote him a letter, and I don't remember what's in it. My dad still got it, but I've never asked to look at it. But I wrote him a letter, said, you need to get your shit together. This is not good. And here's a couple of books to read. I think Think and Grow Rich was in there. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People were in there, and said, read these books, get your shit together, move on with your life. And yeah, so I wrote that to him, and he did. He actually turned around, and he became, he's quite a successful investor. He goes out rock and rolling. He's adamant he's not going to get married again. He's got a long list of women that he helps, that are always around. He's always going around feeding someone's cat or dog when they're away, and he's got all, anyway. There's conversations you don't have with your parents. The closest I got to that was, he was telling me, he was telling me when I went to his house that, one lady was there, and he was showing her the house, and he pointed to the bedroom. So that's the bedroom. If you can't go in there because there's special rules if you go in there. And he goes, she walked in. What was I to do? And I said, Dad, that's as far as I want to go with that conversation. But the thing was, many years later, when I was going through a really difficult period, after separating with my partner, and there was a lot of things that were challenging from that, and my dad provided me a fair bit of support as well. And there was a time I needed a bit of financial support, and asking your dad for help is really difficult, especially asking for money is really difficult. But I mustered up the courage and said, Dad, look, I need this help, and he provided. He was no question about it. He just goes, yeah, no problem. How much do you need? And I was sitting on a train. I was in a suit, well dressed, on a train, and I wrote a text message to my dad saying, look, Dad, I really appreciate the help you've given me through this. It's meant a lot to me. And something along those lines. I can't remember the exact words. And he wrote back. The bastard wrote back while I'm on a train in a suit, with lots of people around me. He wrote back saying, no, I need to thank you for the letter you sent me all those years ago, because you saved my life. So there I am in a packed train in a suit, bawling my eyes out. And so I say that in jest. The bastard wrote back to me, but it was like, oh my God, I was, yeah. But that relationship, I said, I think it came about because we mentioned earlier that the boy doesn't become a man until the father dies is the as a quote.
Yeah.
And although my dad's alive, as a father, he died a long time ago, and it was over a packet of chips. It was really, I didn't even think about it at the time that was going to happen. But I had this is well before I got married and had children. I was in between houses that I bought, so sold a house and bought a new one, and I had no one to nowhere to stay, and so I went and lived with my dad for about 3 months. And my dad's pretty frugal, so he always buys no name brand whatever and stuff like that. And so no chips is no name brand, and I liked Pringles at that time. So that's not a plug for Pringles or anything like that, but I just happen to like them. And I'm sitting in the kitchen eating Pringles chips, and Dad walks in and he looks at me and he goes, "Why are you eating them for? They're expensive," and normally that can be a trigger for a conversation. "Oh, I can eat whatever I want," and that kind of thing. I think we've all had that where someone says something along those lines, and you get into this spiral. And for whatever reason, I turned to my dad and I said, I didn't argue, I didn't justify, I just said, "I like them." And he goes, "Yeah, but they're expensive." And I again didn't justify the cost or anything like that. I said, "Yeah, but I like them." And he just went, "Oh, cool." And it was like, as simple as that sounds, there was a massive shift between us where it was like he recognized I can make my own decisions, and he's going to work with that, and that the dynamic of our relationship changed from that point, to the point where we both now, where if I said I've asked my dad for help, he will actually ask me for help as well. He recently got appointed to a board position, and he was having some issues with that, and he's like, and he sends me some draft letters and goes, "What do you think about this?" So we've got this, and he's always my dad as well. So when I talk to my dad, it's always dad. I never call him by his first name. He's my dad. And so we've had this sort of backwards and forwards mutual respect for each other since that packet of chips incident. So
Nice.
It's been good.
I was wondering about the whole chip story. I've never heard that expression, but there's also a concept where, I think it's a Bible story where somebody was sent to kill someone, but they negotiated, and he didn't really have to kill him. He just took all his money, and then it was as if he died.
I think I've heard that one.
Like you're explaining, like your father hit rock bottom, and that's when you saved him. So in that respect, he also did kind of die and get reborn. So that was the thought that was going through my head, because I kind of feel like I've done that a few times since the divorce. So it's
well, divorce will do that. It'll make you feel a lot of different emotions and experience a lot of different things. That's for sure.
I'm
definitely
curious, Damian, because you mentioned some books that are close to my heart. One of the things, speaking of divorce, and you said you sent your dad some books, including Think and Grow Rich and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Did you find that you hit the books, following your breakup, like some of the advice that you gave to your dad? Did you find yourself telling that to yourself and reading those sort of books?
I don't know if it was because I read a lot of that from a very young age. Well, when I say young, 18, 19-ish. When I was in the army, because of the work that I did, we worked long hours and then had a lot of days off. So effectively, we worked a 7-day fortnight. And the way the routine worked meant you had large gaps of time off. And during that time off, I always used it to do something that would help me grow, and I think the first time I read Think and Grow Rich, I think I was 19 or 20, but I would also in my leave time, so when I had annual leave and everyone else is going on holidays, I booked to attend neurolinguistic programming training and train the trainer for neurolinguistics. So that was my holiday. So again, that thing from Dad, don't get tired, son. It's like that was my time off. So I'd always studied those kind of things, but certainly I drew on a lot of that from when, you know, when things got difficult. I certainly drew on a lot of that knowledge and reminded myself of that knowledge. I also went to, there's a number of dads groups that are around. I went to those groups, but initially I think I went there probably for support, but as soon as I got there, I realized there's people that need more support than I do. And I found in helping the other people, that helped me. Because like if you teach somebody something, you always learn more than if you're just studying it. And so I found in helping other people going through that experience, it actually made my process a lot easier. So from that, that was my story in relation to that. So yeah, I drew a lot of support. To answer your question, I drew a lot of support from that. I didn't hit new books. I did change from the perspective of what I did was, rather than read a lot of books, I would read the same book over and over again. And the key one for me, which is probably my favorite, is How to Be a No Limit Person by Stephen Covey. And the audio version of that is probably the best one, because it really talks about how to control your emotions, how to be in charge of yourself. And it's a fantastic, it's old, it's like from the 70s. But what I did is said, rather than reading a lot of books, I found really good ones, and then I internalized it. I made sure, because often I found from early on when I was reading a lot of books, I'd read it and then I'd move on to the next one, but I hadn't changed. So I was just, and this is something that I learned is, to have the knowledge is one thing, to act is different. This is partly from the military training, that's why you do drill. You do it over and over, so it becomes an unconscious habit. And a lot of times we'll read things, we'll be devouring all this information, but it's just, we know it consciously, not unconsciously. And it's the unconscious area where we need to train ourselves so that we can actually do something different. Because action, I mean, I think we've all had, and your listeners will have had this experience where you've thought you've understood something and you've gone to do it and you've gone, you've messed it up and didn't do it anywhere near as what you thought it was. And the opposite, where you have had the experience where you haven't understood it, or you thought you haven't understood and surprised yourself with how well you've done it, which that really highlights the difference between conscious understanding and unconscious action. Action is an unconscious action. And that's why I picked a couple of key books and I just internalized it and made it, this is who I am. This is how I internalized that knowledge, and that's what I found made a bigger difference, rather than reading, hitting the book, so to speak, and reading a lot of different books.
Yeah, I love that. I've been doing that now. I was just, as you were talking, I've got this great book, not well, you can't see it maybe on my screen, but it's a book by Michael Singer called Living Untethered. And I was hitting like tons of books in the beginning following my breakup, which was helpful, but maybe for this unconsciously, like you're saying, for the same reason, perhaps, it got to a point where I kind of felt like it was like overload. And now I have, this one book right now that I'm reading over and over and over again. And, I think you've verbalized maybe what I was feeling, that now I feel like it's kind of getting into my subconscious, where it's almost hopefully with time becoming more and more, part of my life. So I'm grateful that you said that, because that helps me understand why now I'm at a point where I'm reading one book many times as opposed to many books one time. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the important thing to really, and if one thing the listeners can take from that is that what you've just said is it's not about a multitude of knowledge. One piece of knowledge that you actually internalize becomes an unconscious habit will change your life. Lots of knowledge that you hold consciously won't do anything because your actions are unconscious.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that book for me was the Love Languages book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's an awesome book.
Which was given to us during therapy, but that one like rocked my world. It was just like, wait a minute, I've been doing everything wrong.
There's that.
Yeah,
There's
was,
another one. I don't know if you've come across it, but if you get on YouTube and search "Tale of Two Brains" by Mark Gungor, there's a little 14. He has a program called "Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage," and for everyone, and I'll tell this story because I did a lot of, and still do a lot of work with construction. So I consult into construction companies. So I'm dealing with a lot of rough and tumble guys that are really big, and I always like to share some sort of knowledge and something that's going to help people as I'm going around trying. And Mark Gungor's Tale of Two Brains is a 14 section part of it where it explains how men's brains are like little boxes where we do one thing at a time, the boxes don't touch, that kind of thing, and women's brains are like big balls of wire, where everything's connected to everything. And he says we try and help each other with our own, what we think is the right way of helping, how we would help someone want to be helped, but it's the opposite of what the person needs. And it's really funny. It's a funny video. The whole 4.5 hour program is Laugh Your Way to Better Marriages on YouTube. It's funny all the way through. But I'd show this Tale of Two Brains to people, and just as a bit of a way of getting a conversation going. But one time I did it, we're in the high rise that I was going through and inspecting, and after everyone left, this massive guy with tattoos and your typical
construction
apocalypse he's the brawler out of Mad Max 2, whatever it is. And he was almost bawling his eyes out, and he came to me, he goes, I don't know what to do, man. And I said, what? And he goes, look, my wife and I just at each other all the time. And I said, okay, do you what do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to try and save it, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, do you love your wife? And he goes, yeah, no, I love her a lot. And I said, okay, well, what I'll do is see that short little video. I'll send you the link to the entire program. Now, and what I suggest you do, so it's all on YouTube, just watch it, but watch it somewhere where she's going to walk past. And being a woman, she's going to ask, what are you watching? And I said, just say to her, look, honey, I know we've got our problems. I love you very much. A friend has suggested that I watch this to try and help. And don't say anything after that. Just shut up. And I said, if she's interested, it might stimulate a conversation, but just leave it at that. If she's not interested, don't worry about it. You just pay attention to what you can learn from it and take it from that. I bumped into him about 2 months later, and he was a changed man. And apparently they were like teenagers again, always sneaking off when the kids weren't looking to go and have some fun together. So it was, it's these kind of things that can change how we deal with things. It's just, and that's where I found, like, helping people, even telling that story now, I feel really good that, I just feel really good inside. And a friend said it on a friend in London. We're having this discussion about this kind of thing, and he said, yeah, that's why I don't do, he said, this is why I don't do drugs or drink, because giving and helping other people is actually a bigger high and it lasts longer. I was like, yeah, you're right. And that's where I said that's part of why I've try and do these kind of things. And so that's why I was highlighting the Mark Gungor thing, because it is really a helpful, like you said, the 7 habits. Mark Gungor refers to the 7 habits. He talks about where encouraging women to say what they want to do and ask more than once, because guys don't hear it if you ask once generally. I'm very guilty of that still. And he was talking about how he's, it was Mark Gray was saying, how his wife, or as the story goes, his wife wanted to go to the opera, and he's like, I don't want to go to the opera. And finally, she convinced him to go to the opera. So he's booked a ticket and gone to the opera. Got into the suit, and he's like, and he endures this really, as Gungor put it, this mind-numbing experience, and Gray did, apparently. And so when they get home, they drive into the garage, and he said as soon as the door closed in the garage, she jumped on top of him and made love to him right there in the car. And he's like, the next day, how much are season tickets to the opera? And
That's
nice.
great.
Yeah, so it's just, again, it's finding the way of communicating, and I've noticed, from my perspective, learning, and that's one of the biggest things I took from that's helped certainly as a dad is listening a lot to my son. So that I've never yelled at him. I don't dictate to him. With like I made a thing. I said, well, I'm going to treat it like I'm a leader of a business. And he's an employee, one that I can't fire. So I've got to manage this well because I can't get rid of him. Here he can, but I don't want to. I want to be a good dad. So I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? And part of it was listening to, and I looked at how myself and my dad got along, and there was open communication. We were able to talk to each other. From an early age, I focused on his character. So it wasn't about school marks or things like that, or you must be this sports person. It's like you need to be, honesty. Our family values, key family values are honesty, excellence, and understanding. So it focused on, okay, let's develop, your character. It's not my job as a parent, and certainly my dad is not. I mean, when I've was as younger, when I was not doing so well, like I was going to school and not doing anything, I was just sitting in the classroom doing nothing. He was like, you need to do something. And it's like, you can't leave school unless you got a job. And that's when the army people come around 2 weeks later and said, oh, I'm out of here. But so I wanted to create something with him, with my son, where it was like, okay, so I said to him when he was in primary school, I said, do you know why you're going to school? Because, just like with the study, he wasn't all, and who is motivated with school study? Not many people.
Yeah.
I said, do you know why you're going to school? And he goes, no. So I actually talked through. I said, well, you see what I do in the day where I go out and earn money and to live. And I explained that to him. And I said, well, this is what school does. It gives you the foundation so that you can do that. So you're learning knowledge so that you can actually go out. People want to employ you, or you can create your own business. And you can live the life the way you want to live it. And it was very big on your decision. Partly I said, and I joked, facetiously said to him, and said, and I do this. It's like, well, it's your decision. If you mess it up, you can't blame me in a psychologist's office later. You can't go to a shrink and say it's all my fault because I was bossing you around.
Sure, you're not a lawyer.
I do a lot of contractual work, so yeah, there is maybe that's creeping
I say
in.
that I'm a lawyer by profession, unfortunately, so that's why I made that joke. But anyway,
okay, yeah, I'm what they call a bush lawyer. I have some knowledge, and I deal with a lot of contracts and things like that, and obviously with the dads that I help, I deal a lot with the family law as well now, provide some insights where some lawyers have missed them actually, and it's like, well, why don't we do that? And the lawyer said, oh, it's just not processed. But it said the judge can make a decision here. Why are you not encouraging your client to do that?
Right.
So I share that with the dads and say, you can do this. You don't worry about what the lawyer says. The law says you can do that, so do it. Move the thing forward quicker. But yeah, so the relationship with my dad, coming back to that, no, with my son was about this mutual respect. So I asked him, what do you want with his school, like his study? I said, what grades do you want to get? And he said the grades that he wanted. It wasn't the highest grade, but it was very high. Right. And then when he was doing things, rather than say, you need to study, I'd see him doing something, and I'd ask him, have you taken a step towards getting the grades that you want? And sometimes he'd go, no, I haven't done the homework. And I said, would it be helpful to do that? And he goes, yeah, it's a good idea. And then off he'd go and do it. So that's why I never had to yell at him, because it was his choice, and he was working towards that. Obviously he was guided in making some of those choices.
Yeah.
But it was that relationship. And then same token too, when he's done what he needs to do, and getting the results, he plays a lot of video games, and a lot. He goes out with me and we play badminton together with some friends, and we do, he does karate. He's almost got his black belt in karate. Wow. So he's not like he's not active. But in his free time, after he's done everything else, he wants to play video games. Who am I to say that's not how he should enjoy his leisure time? And so I give him that space. This holidays that's just had, he was with me from the start of December until New Year's Day. Wow. He spent a lot of that, he's a lot of his free time playing video games and online with his friends as well. I mean, we went on some trips and stuff like that. We were away for like 3 days and other periods of time where he's come out and done things. So it's not like that's how he's spent his entire time. And and when I've done that, he hasn't complained about it. He's just come along and I could tell that he didn't really want to be hanging around with me and my friends, going and looking at some flora and fauna, because there was some friends that came here and I showed them some national parks and stuff like that, that he probably didn't want to do that. But he did. He came along, and then it's, and then when he's doing his thing, I'm not judging him and say you shouldn't be doing that. It's his free time, it's his life. And as I said to him, you mess it up, you can't blame me. It's your actions, your choice. And that's the lawyer response, I guess.
What would you say to somebody, because you mentioned before about having core values, right? Your honesty, excellence, and understanding, and not to ask you about you personally, but what would you say to a dad, let's say, because you do counsel dads, you said, right? Not as a lawyer, but with the experience you've had and everything like that. So what would you say to a dad who says to you, I've got certain values that I want for my children, but I'm not the only one in my child's life. There's an ex-partner that is involved, and that ex-partner may have different set of values. Is there anything you would counsel that dad, how to handle that? Is there something one can do, or that's just beyond one's control?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and something that's obviously challenging when things break up, and partly the reason things break up is because you have a difference of opinion that's not resolvable. And I think, and I'm not sure how all the law works in other areas of the world, but certainly here in Australia, no one has the right to tell you how to parent your child. Now, that's where it becomes difficult. Well, obviously things outside of, within the law. So, parenting your child by beating the snot out of them is the law is going to step in and say you can't do that. But, as far as when you're talking to answering your question, when you're talking about values and things like that, so you don't have the ability to tell someone else. I can't tell any of my friends this is how you should, and the law can't dictate that either. The law can't say this is how you should raise your child. You're part of a cult, for example, and they can't say no, you can't be part of a cult because that's bad for the children. That's how the law works here. That becomes challenging when you split up with your partner, because you've got an idea of how you want to raise a child. They've got an idea of how you raise your child. From my experience, what I did was I led by example, and I followed. I have a mission statement, my own personal mission statement, which is to enjoy life and share in the joy of others, to learn something daily that increases my ability to overachieve. Again, my dad made me think that I had to work very hard, and to confidently and compassionately act from my values of honesty, excellence, and understanding. Now, so I accepted that I can't control what happens outside of that, and nor do I have a right to. I don't have a right to tell his mother how she should behave and how she should parent. I don't have that right. All I can do is be the example for him by living to my values and sharing that and doing that. And this is where that leadership and motivation comes in. So I do that in a way, and I've always done that in a way that for him it's been like, well, these are good things to follow. This is not telling him why, but actually saying that it's beneficial for him to do that. And he's learned through his own experience where there was in the school there was a bully picking on one of his friends, and he addressed that in a sensible and approachable way, worked with the teachers and got the whole situation resolved. He did that on his own behalf. Wow. And I think he was 11 at the time.
Wow.
And so he learned, he did it and so from that, he's learned from that experience, this is a good way to behave. Does he, I don't know what he does at his mum's house, and I don't ask. But I know with me, he behaves in a certain way. And I would say because I've been very committed to what I'm doing, I don't talk about. And this is where I think I've focused on supporting and encouraging the behaviors that I want. So when he does something that I like, I really praise it a lot. I say, that's wonderful, great job, all that sort of stuff that's not so great. I kind of, push it to the side a little bit and don't make a big thing about it and don't draw attention to it. I really highlight the things that, and highlight the things that work and I want to encourage. But also from a young age as well, I encouraged him to like himself. I asked him all the time, do you like yourself? Do you, I remember there's and it's a mantra, and I find it funny. I have these little little clips from films that I take and use as motivation for me. There's a couple of quotes from Steve Jobs in there. There's things from Saving Private Ryan. But there's a scene in the movie Enchanted where they're in this, the Prince Charming and his aide are in this hovel of a hotel, and the aide's watching something like Oprah or things like that, talking about, do you, liking yourself is important, that kind of thing. And the aide finishes, and he gets up and he's about to walk out the room, and he turns to Prince Charming and he says, "Sire, do you like yourself?" And Prince Charming thinks for a second. He goes, "What's not to like?" And so and that was sort of something that I took on and going, well, yeah, I like me. I mean, there's some behaviors that I probably need to work on, and there still are, and there always will be, that, and this is that constant improvement, which is why it's in my, to learn something daily that increases my ability to overachieve is part of my mission statement, because there's always behaviors you can change. But as far as me internally, I like me, and that's the same for my son. It was always, ask him, do you like yourself? And to the point where now he goes, yeah, I like myself. And I think because he likes himself, he's confident in what he's doing, and he can do that, which is, it's really interesting. And I wonder, because when I look at it, he actually, I mean, as much as he has his own mobile phone, computer, iPad, that kind of thing, when we go out a lot of places, he doesn't take his phone. He's not on, he doesn't take it with him. He's not on social media, or he's not. I rarely see him. He's online with his friends when he's playing video games, but he's connecting with his friends, so he's not on this whole social media thing. And I wonder if that's because from an early age it was like he doesn't need to get on there, and also too, I'm not on social media a lot either, so I'm not constantly on my phone looking at social media, so maybe that was part of that.
Right.
But it was just, he's his own person. He's happy with who he is. And the teachers have said that at school as well. They say it's a rare thing where you just see this child that's just happy in their space. Doesn't matter what anyone else does. He's not influenced. He's not sucked in by peer pressure. He just, if he sees something's not right, he'll say it's not right. He's confident going in his own way. So yeah.
Do you think karate played a part in that as well?
I think that had a part. I got him to do karate. We had a difficult, because he had his two older half sisters went to a fairly exclusive private girls' school, but their preschool, not prep or grade one, but preschool, the boys were allowed to attend, and being a boy, he was running around a lot, not paying attention, making train noises, and we got pulled into the office where they're going, we're a bit concerned about your son, he doesn't sit still and he's making train noises. And I'm like, he's a boy.
He's a boy.
he's 3 and he's a boy. I think I was 40 at the time. I said, no, it wasn't even 40. I was 35, I think 35, 36, whatever it was. I said, I still make sound effects when I do stuff. It's like, this is normal. And so I was, it was like, I forgot where I was going with that. So the karate thing. So because of that, I wanted to, give him some stillness, because I thought maybe he does need that. So that's where there was karate that was taught at the school. There's actually the sensei there who I've got to know and is a close friend now. He had very traditional values in the teaching of karate, that it's about discipline, it's about defense. That's like with the code, I rewrote the Knights Code to a more modern time and made it gender neutral. And from our perspective of violence, we say violence is acceptable, only acceptable in the battlefield, which quote unquote is the sporting arena. I mean, you if you were to tackle someone, do a rugby tackle or a gridiron tackle, whatever your sport is, if someone was standing on the street at a traffic light and you did a tackle, that would be highly inappropriate, and that would be a violent act. But in a sporting game, if you took the tackle out, it'd be pretty boring to can I have the ball, please?
Yeah. Excuse me.
And yeah, exactly. And so in that environment, that's okay if both willing parties get in there and they both agree this is how we are to behave, and they behave to the extent allowed by the rules. and the other circumstances in self-defense, but only to the maximum, to the minimum amount required to defend yourself, which is what my Benjamin's karate sensei taught was, this is for self-defense only. And he has a number of things to do before, if you're in a conflict situation, put distance between you. He teaches that as part of the karate. And so Benjamin did that to create some stillness. So yeah, to what you were saying, Ben, I think karate does play a big part of that, because it also gave him that confidence to go, hey, if in a situation that's difficult, I know how to deal with this. As Pete teaches, first D is distance, second D is defense, is in your own personal defense, your own emotional defense, be in control of your emotions. Distract, so do something that's going to distract the situation. So that karate was I think plays a big part, and I think it would be helpful for a lot of people to be taught those kind of principles.
Yeah, 100%. I actually got my son his first cell phone so he can play games, just to build up his self-esteem, because in school he wasn't getting it. And so I wanted him, I knew that feeling from growing up. My ex didn't, but I knew, like you get that video game and you make it to the next level and you make it to the next level and you make it to the next level. And like, finally you're like, oh my gosh, I can do things. When it's school, they're saying totally other things. So now he's like a pretty intense gamer, but like you said about your son, like he's not by himself. He's on speakerphone, or he's on some channel where he's coordinating with a bunch of people to accomplish things. So I do drag him on those hikes as well. And it's, we're going, when we come back, you can get back on, fine. And then when he gets there, he has a great time. But yeah, so I also use that as well.
And I agree with you with that from that perspective. I don't think that video games are a bad thing. It's like any tool, it's how you use it. And we had that experience with my son. He was playing, we had a racing game. I got the racing seat and all that kind of stuff. And he had this shocker of because we were alternating. He'd do one race, I'd do the next race. And he had this shock of a race, and you could see he was getting all emotionally upset. He was getting, distracted. He was performing bad, and then making himself perform even worse. And he had this shock of a race, and he was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm about to leave. And this is where, again, I said, I've never yelled at him, but I said, no, I know it's my turn. You're doing this again. And this is how I want you to focus on the corners. I want you to think forward, be focused on what you're doing, focus on the outcome you're trying to achieve. And he did the race, and he did his best race ever. Best time. And I said, when he finished, I said, what did you learn from that? And he says, never give up, keep focused forward. And it was
that is right.
He was what was he, 7 when that happened?
Wow.
And that's where even a couple of days ago, he's playing there, and he's playing, he likes to shoot 'em up games, and the same token with the violent video games, before, when he was younger, there were certain games I wouldn't let him play, that he'd wanted, but I wouldn't let him play because they were too violent. But we did have a discussion about that and said, this is a video game. There's rules in the video game that apply that don't apply in real life. And so in the video game, you're allowed to do this. In real life, you're not. And we had that discussion. But similar sort of thing, just recently, he's playing this shoot 'em up game, and the big boss, and he's getting frustrated. And he literally had spent 4 hours trying to get this big boss. And he still hadn't got it. And he goes, I'm going to get it. And I said, that's right. That's how you achieve goals. You keep going. And, it's the principle that you're teaching, not the mechanism that's important. It's the principle that you teach.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And as far as the hard work that you got from your father, my mother raised me basically. I guess I saw my father once a month or so once he moved away. And she raised me with, there's no such thing as trying, only doing. And
so she's the original Yoda.
Right. So that's what everybody keeps telling. Like I never until I started telling more and more people, I never even thought about it. But like that's how I grew up. And she didn't really live by that motto. She did a whole lot of learning and self-improvement and going to all these courses and stuff, but she never really like took that action. And I saw all of this, and Yoel will tell you, I'm just an action person. Like
Yeah.
if I have an idea, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it into the world. I'm going to, there's no point for it to sit in my head because
Yeah.
it's just not even worth it. And then as far as learning something in a book, like if I read it, I'm like, all right, let's do it. Like right now, let's do it. And that's the, you know, some people learn by doing, some people learn by reading, some people just learn and never do anything. And,
Yeah.
you know, for me, it's all action, you know, and talking about, you know, the family and how the family works together. So, my, one of the upcoming books, I wrote my first children's book. The second one's being illustrated now. But the third one is all about the family unit and kind of
Okay.
structuring it as like a factory. So
Ah,
I have 5 kids. So if
yeah.
one of the
Wow.
kids or
You've been busy.
machines,
Is it
yeah.
cold where
So
you are?
one of the kids, uh, one of the kids, like a machine, let's say,
Yeah.
decides that it's not going to do what it's supposed to do, then like
Yeah.
in the I Love Lucy episode with the chocolate, it's just going to back
Yeah.
up everything, and everything's going to start falling apart.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the concept of that book.
Great
So it's
analogy.
that
Yeah, love it.
same, yeah. So it's it's very, it's, you know, some people, you know, they stay in their bubble and they're not interested in helping or giving back or learning, and that's, you know, I don't have mission plans like you do written out. I think Yoel's got like the middle point where he's got a whiteboard that's got stuff on it. To me,
Yeah.
this is like all concepts in my head that I try to live every day. But I don't even know where that exercise would go with me.
Yeah, we did it. We took it even further. We designed a coat of arms for our family, and I wanted to do that, but I involved my son with that process, and he came up with the animals that were on the coat of arms. So our main animal is a Komodo dragon,
Nice.
which he wanted to have, because of a number of different characters with that, and there's certain colors, and we some flowers on there as well that we had that all had specific meaning. But we worked on it together. He even had ants on there because of their fastidiousness and the teamwork aspect.
Wow.
So it was a good project to do together. We haven't quite got it finished because the artist that did the Komodo dragon, the back right leg looks like it's deformed, so I need to get that redone. But it was more again, for me, I wanted to do it, but it was a process of
It's the
involving
process.
my son with that process. And we created a bond over that. But from what you're talking about with your child and self-confidence, I think the biggest aspect that has for me personally in my own personal growth and for my son was this concept of liking yourself. That you might do something that's not, a behavior might not be right, you might do something in the situation. It was also learning for me that in any given moment, that you did the best you could at that point in time. Because if you could have done better, you say, well, yeah, consciously I had the knowledge, but again, you're not acting consciously, you're acting unconsciously. So it's like you did the best you could in that point in time. Don't beat yourself up. Like yourself if you recognize it, you should like yourself because you recognize, hey, that I probably could behave better next time in the future. And again, keep that future focus forward. You can't live in the past. Right. But I noticed with Benjamin this whole concept of do you like yourself? And I don't have to say it to him or ask him anymore because you can see it in the way he walks, and he knows he likes himself inside, and he knows things, and he's just confident about how he wants to do things. And from my perspective, me, and I think as we talked about before about with my parents breaking up and me carrying the blame for my parents arguing, when I let go of that and said, hey, I like myself, it just changed the whole dynamic, my ability, the confidence to do. It's like, well, I'm going to do this. Going through some processes where, the situations that I've been in, and you'll know this, where, from a lawyer perspective, I've been in situations where I've been head to head with some barristers, and it was only later that I got told by some very respectable lawyers. They looked at it and said, you went head to head with some pretty powerful people, pretty well experienced people, and I held my own, which was
you, man. That's awesome.
So it was, but it was again this liking myself and giving myself that it's okay, I know I'm a good person and I'm going to make mistakes, and that's a behavior and I can learn from that going forward. But internally I like myself, and that gave me the confidence to just do whatever it is that I wanted to do or needed to do.
I think that's something also that's super important in terms of for our audience, for many of the men out there listening, because I think we may have this on our website. I think the stat may be somewhere around 70%, where a lot of the divorces are initiated by the wife. And I think there's a lot of men out there that wonder if they're lovable. You know, am I lovable? Am I likable? Like, this person didn't love me anymore. And I think that's an important concept for people to realize that, yes, you are lovable, you are likable. And I love what you do, you know, so it's not only important for instilling it in our children. And I'm just loving what you're sharing with our audience, but also for, you know, dads themselves to realize that, hey, I'm a likable and lovable person myself. It's really important.
I think that is important, but also too, to put it in context, I shouldn't say but, and to put it in context as well, you know, from a dad perspective. I mean, if you're a nice guy, there's more women on the planet than there are men, and there's a lot more nice women out there that you probably haven't met yet that are looking for relationships that, you know, they're really wonderful. And that's been something maybe for another time to talk about, but certainly from my experience, there is multiple really wonderful women out there. So for any dads listening, have that in mind, that, you know, you just got to find them, because they're not hanging out in bars. They're they're not, you know, they're not out getting drunk. They're actually really respectable, really kind, really thoughtful, and you know, and you are a likable person. You are a good person. If you're a dad and you're a caring dad, then you are you know, an amazing guy that some really wonderful woman is going to like. You just got to find them, and said you won't find them in bars.
Yeah, I definitely went through a phase where, like, I thought I just didn't know how to love because I came from a broken family. Like, after 14 years of marriage, like, where did I, like, maybe I just, after I read the love language book, I was like, maybe I just don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I just don't know how to love. But after time, I realized it probably wasn't my problem. But it like, you know, I work with children for like 20 years, and like every one of those children I called them my kids, and they knew that. And, you know, I was there for some of them more than their parents were around for them. And, you know, going back in time and realizing like who I was before I got married kind of made me realize that, no, that's probably not the problem. But it was definitely a phase where, like, I was like, maybe I just don't know what I'm doing, and it's me, you know? And so that's really important, to learn that it's not you. I think, and you do, and to move forward with your kids in that relationship, you need to have the knowledge to know that you do know how to love. It's not like something that you can't
how to love, and how to be loved too. I would add how to love and how to be loved.
And there's something, I mean, because I grew up with, you know, and what you're talking about there, Ben, I think, you know, and a lot of people experience this, was, you know, and I know in a number of relationships, I tried to make it work. And I think a lot of dads are in that situation. A lot of men are in that situation where they're trying to make things work. And they put in a lot of that effort, and they're wondering what's wrong with me, and why can't I make this work? And it was something that really hit home, and it's a book that I'm actually writing. But something I learned very late in life was no amount of skill will fix a poor partner choice. Now, that's not to say, and because they say, oh, don't associate with, you know, negative people and stuff like that. Sometimes, you know, because I'm pretty sure in some of the relationships that I've had that have fallen apart, you know, from their perspective, I was the problem. And probably to some degree I was. I would say in definitely in some degree I was. And it's about, I remember when I was in the army, there was a guy, and he was a good looking guy. But he wasn't the brightest spark on the planet, you know, so he was really good looking, but he was dumb as dog shit, to put it bluntly. But he was always dating these like amazingly hot women. And when I say hot women, they weren't hot, just physically hot. They were hot, mentally hot. These were, you know, doctors and lawyers and just really, really intelligent women that look gorgeous. And we're looking and going, how? How is this possible? And so one day I decided to ask him, and I was a little bit blunt back then. So I walked up and I said, Shane, you're not the brightest person on the planet. I literally said that to him. How is it that you're, dating all these really hot women? And he turned into like this wise Obi-Wan Kenobi character. He put his arm around my shoulder and he said, Damian, what you don't understand is I ask a lot. Most of them say no. You just see the ones that say yes. And it was like, so when we're looking at that, and certainly, from a sales perspective, if we're wanting to create a sales relationship with someone, you find that people that are already online with what they've got similar beliefs, they're actually show interest straight away. So when and I connected this with, after my marriage broke down, I was talking with a lot of people that I know that have long-term relationships. And one thing that was consistent, the numbers were slightly different, but they all said, when they were dating and looking for a partner, they had a criteria that was right for them. They knew who they were, or do as much as they could. But they knew what they wanted in a partner. And even you mentioned Tony Robbins before. Tony Robbins talked about that. He identified what was the type of partner he wanted. But it was the people, and one person put a number on it. They said, if that person didn't meet at least, if the person I was dating didn't meet at least 80% of that criteria, I just stopped seeing them, no matter how passionate, no matter how, he said, no matter how much great the sex was, I just stopped seeing. He said, that was hard, but no pun. That was, that was, he said it was, but and he's been in a long-term, like happy, well, from what I can tell, and you can tell when people aren't getting it. People say, oh, you don't know what's going on. Yeah, you can. You can tell when people are still passionate about each other by the way they behave to each other. If they walk to a function holding hands and leaving holding hands, it's there's pretty clear sign that things are going all right. If they're walking one's behind the other or something like that, there's some issues. So you can generally tell, and that was that key thing that for the dads out there listening, coming back to that, is be clear about what it is that you want in a partner, and don't think when you're there is what is it, 7.8 billion people on the planet, and more than half of those are women. Surely there's a few out there that you're going to connect with. So it's a numbers game. Coming back to that guy Shane, he just like them, have that criteria. Ask, move on. Ask, move on. And the quicker you move on to asking the next person, the more likely you're to find that right person.
Okay, so I'll challenge that a little bit. So now that you have 7 billion people to date, or half of 7 billion plus a little, how do you know when to stop?
How do you know when to stop?
Yes.
Dating. Well,
yes.
It comes to that criteria. Do you meet, I know,
if it's a numbers game, how do you not say, oh, well, I can get to 95%. 80 isn't enough. So,
well, and that might be what you say. You might say 95% and you leave that. But at some point, if you've set a criteria, it's like any goal setting. If you've set a criteria that you want to achieve, then when you get that criteria, then that's when you stop. I mean, it's like, the saying of it's always in the last, you when you lose something, you always find it the last place you look. Well, who keeps looking after you found it? So if you find what you want, that's when you stop. It's like, but some people are not ready. You might not be ready to stop. You might be, you might have your own issues to go, hey, I'm scared of getting into a relationship again because I might get hurt again. That's quite common. I had that. Whereas like, I didn't want to commit to another relationship. And when I had that, I got married late. I didn't want to commit to a relationship. I was a serial monogamist, I called it. I was always dating someone for a while and getting along well, and then this is not right, and then move on. But that wasn't an issue with the person. When I look at a number of those relationships that I ended, they were actually really, really good people and really kind people and could have had a long relationship with them. I wasn't ready. So that there's two components to that. There's one, being clear about what it is that you want in another person, and two, being ready, you being a good partner as well. The other part to that I would add was don't go into a relationship expecting people to change. This is where I think a lot of relationships end. So if you're looking at this person going, okay, I like this person, but if they did this differently, I wish they did this differently. And Mark Gungor talks about this a lot in his program, where example is smoking's a good example. It's like, oh, I wish they'd quit smoking. Do they smoke when you started dating? Yes. Well, if you didn't like it then, why did you keep dating this person? And if there's certain behaviors that are there and you don't like them, and well, don't date them. It's going to become a problem later if it's that much of an issue. So don't date someone. And the gratitude things is really important too. I noticed, like, with the relationships that I've had that worked really well, it was, what do I like about this person? And if something was becoming an issue, it immediately, and again, an unconscious action, I trained myself to do that. Whereas, the relationship I'm in now, it's been very happy for a long time. Never had an argument, because, it's, what do I like about this person? What's great about this person? That's the focus. There's behaviors, there's different. And if we have different things we want to do, she goes and does her thing and I do my thing. And it's like, we're both okay with that,
Yeah, there's actually a book that I would love to get the author on. It's called 10 Really Dumb Mistakes That Very Smart Couples Make. Yeah. And I think we've hit two of them today. One of them is, don't try to change the other person. And basically the summary of when he's kind of explaining it is, there's a study that if you can get past 30 years, that's when that couple's the happiest, because after 30 years, nobody's trying to change anybody. They realize these are the people and that's going to be it. So if you can make it to there, then the rest is great. And the other one, I'm trying to think what the other one was. Anyway, it's a great book, and I'm hoping to get the author on here at one point. But yeah, it's just very simple things when, like, you're looking at it and it's like, now they tell us.
Well, that's the like, thing. Why wait 30 years? I mean, that was a conscious, because I used to do that. I'd be in a relationship with someone and go, I don't like this behavior, and that's why I'd end it and then start with someone else. And then I made that conscious choice, and it was something my mum had said, was, if you love someone, you love them as they are, which is, she's quoting something else. And you mentioned the Bible before, it's probably in the Bible as well. But if you are loving them as they are, you're not seeking to change it. So why wait 30 years? Why not just do that and focus on the things that you like about the person? And all of a sudden it's a lot easier. And if they do something you don't like, just don't be there. So look, I don't like that behavior. I'm going to go, I remember the knowledge, the advice the priest gave us when I first got married was, men need to keep their shed, because we need a place to go to. And
a man cave or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And we both need that. It's not just the guys, the girls need their space as well. And also too, I think it's important to remember that your partner is not, whether it's male or female, not your boyfriend or girlfriend, depending on what it is. So it's like, if you're a guy, this behaviors I'll do with my friends that I won't do with my partner, because it's not appropriate. I won't sit on my wife's head and fart. Well, I'll quite happily do that to my mates,
after some beer, before the beer.
I don't drink anymore, so it's like, I can quite do all. It's more fun when you're sober. You can remember it. But that's our birthright as a male. You can still be 12-year-old and be juvenile and do all this stupid stuff. But I wouldn't do that with my wife. Whereas my and same token with my wife, I'm not her girlfriend. If she wants to have these long, there's some conversations I listen to, because you have to. With a lot of them, it's like, okay. But there's long conversations that she has with her girlfriends that she won't have with me, because that's not, the appropriate way to have a relationship. I'm not her girlfriend in the sense of, one of her buddies that she does what girls do together, whatever that is. I don't want to know. It's not. I'm going to go to my shed.
Right. By the way, Damian, I mean, you mentioned, not just out of curiosity, you mentioned, you're not going to, there's a lot of kind women out there, but you won't find them in a bar. I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but for the most part, so, do you find, we were talking about social media before, the dating apps, is that something that's popular, you find, for guys? Or I'm just curious, from your experience in relationships.
I was interested to listen to a number of dads that I've worked with, because I met a lot of women when I was dating after marriage broke up. Beforehand, I don't know. I mean, they're different. I mean, there was one place when I was in Perth, nightclubs weren't great, but they had a nightclub that actually had ballroom dancing. And you met some really, really nice women there. They were actually, they weren't, again, drinking and drunk and that kind of thing. They were just, wanted to go and have a good time and enjoy dancing. I mean, for dads out there, listen to this advice. 1, be a nice guy. 2, learn how to dance. That's my dad dates heaps of women. He goes rock and roll dancing all the time.
Wow.
And if you can dance, that they love that. And a lot of them can't dance. But you say, oh, I'll teach you. You teach them a basic waltz, and they're like, "Oh, this is so wonderful." It's not hard.
All right, we'll have to have your father on for that to teach us all how to dance.
But yeah, he goes, rock and rolling all the time. And so those kind of places, and what I was surprised was the stigma that seems to be, oh, you don't meet, and it is challenging. I think if you're genuine online, and are genuinely nice, you've actually got a really good advantage, because there's a number of guys on there that are complete and utter dicks, and they show their dicks. It's like, that doesn't, girls are not interested in that. Well, they are when you're in a relationship, but you've got that. It's not as a first liner here, check it out,
Right.
And listen, you don't have to know everything, guy, because you talked about, Gray and Men of Mars. We're Mr. Fix It. So when the women talk to us, we're always thinking about how to fix it. This is your chance to go to your nothing box. Just nod your head and go. And one good way.
They just want to talk. Yeah.
They just want to talk. And it's like, I'm sitting there, I do that all the time. I'm sitting there going, well, we should get to the point. I'm not saying it, but I'm thinking we should get to the point. Oh, wait a minute. The point is she just wants to connect. Shut up, listen. And repeating the last couple of words they say is always good too. Not just, I mean, this works not just with women, but in business as well. If you're in a negotiation situation, certainly one of the programs I teach is Negotiation Magic, which is a program that I've written. But one of the strategies you use is you repeat the last couple of words. So when they finish speaking, and you say, "Oh, you finished speaking," and then they'll start talking more and giving more information. But in a relationship perspective, the lady will keep talking, your partner will keep talking, and she will actually feel even more connected to you, because you've only said a couple of words. This is the thing for guys. It's easy for us. We only have to say a couple of words, and all of a sudden she feels really connected to you. And then, if she feels connected to you, guess what? You're going to have fun that night. We had that where we're at a Christmas party. This is before COVID. And coming back to the dancing thing, we're on table, and I was there with my partner, and the couple were there. He'd never ever danced, and finally convinced him that dancing was a good thing. So he got up. He didn't know how to, and he was just shuffling around, and we were moving around him and his partner, and because we talked. I'm shortening the conversation, but we had talked about the benefits and things like that. And as we're talking, I said, so is he going to get rewarded when he gets home? And she goes, yeah, he's going to get so rewarded. And it was like, and I go, are you going to dance again? He goes, oh yeah.
Yeah, I've dabbled a bit in it, come out of my shell in my old age, in my 40s, but I can't say I'm the world's best dancer, but I'm learning a little bit, I think, here and there.
And that's the thing, you don't have to, you just have to try. girls appreciate the fact that you tried. So you said you don't even have to be an expert. This is why it's easy for us. But it's also, again, coming back to that point, no amount of skill fixes a poor partner choice. That's not to say one's wrong. It means that you find someone that connects with, and if the woman connects with you and she appreciates you, she's going to appreciate those things that you've done, that you've made an effort. Gray talks about that in his book. Just making an effort is, it's appreciated with the right person. If they're not the right person, date someone else.
Right. Wow.
So speaking about efforts, we do like to always highlight a moment where we call our Two Dads Quit moment, where you felt like you were an awesome dad, or you did something that you just, that day you looked in the mirror and you were like, man, today I did a dad thing. No one else could beat me. And we'd love to hear one of those moments from you.
It was a moment that, well, the one that stands out was with my son, obviously, but we were at the cinema. We're watching the movie June, and I don't know, have you seen the movie?
I haven't. By the way, I'm noticing, Damian, that you're a movie guy. It seems like, right? Because you've quoted movies. I'm a major movie guy, but you quoted the one movie I haven't. I've got Kevin Costner here in my background.
Yeah,
the
I can
one
see
movie
that.
I haven't seen is June. So I damn it. But I've seen probably most of the ones you've quoted so far.
But
anyway,
I worked a little bit in film and television. I had my own production company, and we produced a few things. I was in Nightmares and Dreamscapes with Tom Berenger. I got cut mostly. I mean, they're there for half a second because I couldn't act for shit. But I'm in there just for that little bit.
No way. Do you have an do you have an IMDb? Are you?
I'm on the IMDb. If you search me on IMDb, you can see there's a movie I wrote called Scary Legends. We never finally finished. We shot a lot of it. I've got a number of scenes on YouTube. Actually, I don't think I published them. I've loaded them. But and I had a TV on the local community TV station here. I had a what is it? The variety show where there was 3 hosts, and then we had some skits. I did some stand-up comedy of Steve Irwin before he died. I actually did this thing where we we had to save the hairy hat, which was like this Russian hat that we had on a string line that I'm chasing around trying to catch, and then it's biting me, and it was like having a bit of fun.
All right, we got to check that out.
And there was like one of the scenes because I wrote I like fart humor, and there was this scene where it's a really serious there's this scene where the girl's talking, getting because this guy died as a result of that, but it was because she played and this is really crass for you, just if you for your viewers, just if that offends you, tune out now. But it was like she's talking about this whole story where this guy died as a result of her actions, and her and her friend were playing this they were together, and they were teasing this guy that was there, and because that trying to show that they were being lesbian. And they said, well, if you want us to go further, they just said play the self blowjob initiation. Said, well, if you can suck your thing, we'll kiss each other. And then and he goes, he could do it, but then he broke his neck and died. And it was like. So there was a lot of that crass type humor in there that get to this. There's a lot of things like that, but that's why there's a lot of connection to movies. But this answering Ben's question, sorry Ben, you said you're waiting for an answer to your question.
Where were we?
I'm on 12
Took a bit of a detour.
I've never been diagnosed with ADHD or whatever it is, so you can't prove that.
It's okay. It's okay. This weekend I launched the clips version of our YouTube channel, so now we can. For all those people who do have attention problems, they can go to Too Dad to Quit clips, and we can take the podcast in pieces.
Nicely done. Ben's always the marketer. Nice job, Ben.
Product placement. I love it. I don't like ads, but product placement like that, I really appreciate.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Anyway, you were talking about June.
But coming back to the point, so June. Yeah. So in the movie June, we were watching that, and there's a scene in that where the father and the son, because the son's supposed to take over the role. And they're having this talk about that, and the son and the father's talking to the son and says, "Look, what you do is up to you. You are already everything that you need to be from my perspective. You're my son, that's all you ever are. That's all I'll ever expect of you as being my son. And we both looked at each other and laughed, because that's what I've been saying to Benjamin for a long time. I said, you can do whatever you want to do. You're already everything you need to be. You're my son. I'll support you, whatever it is that you want to be. It's not for me to tell you how to live your life. You're my son. You're everything you need to be. And we connect over that all the time. So it comes up a lot where we joke about that. Yeah, so it was a pivotal moment, I think. And as it comes back to that packet of chips we were talking about before, where my dad recognized, that I'm my own man, and I'm always going to be his son. And that's why I call him dad. I have friends that call their dads by their first name. I mean, and that's their choice. Everyone has their own choice. But for me, my dad is my dad. And he'll always be my dad. And I will always be, his son, in the sense of now I'm an adult as well. That's why he can ask me for advice. And so, just accepting, and this comes back to that point we were talking about, not changing, wanting to change the person. I want to encourage my son to be his own man, make his choices. And that was the moment where we kind of laughed and recognized, that we have that relationship. So that was our packet of chips moment, between myself and my son, was, you are my son. That's all you ever need to be. Not only that, June says it's right, so it must be right because it's in the movies.
There you
Beautiful.
go. You can add it to the clips.
Yeah, that's awesome. Beautiful.
Oh, good point. I haven't put that in the clips. Oh, because I've got to, yeah. I've actually cut it together in, using iMovie, and I got all these clips cut together. So
awesome. And then something else. Oh, why not? So yeah, and the last thing that we like to keep getting from our guests is some advice for either a husband, a wife, a dad that's going through divorce, considering divorce. Just some advice to get them through it, to maybe change their mind. Just, you've been through it. You're on the other side. I know it wasn't easy for you. Just something, give them strength and inspire them, and let them know, from your perspective, something that you wish you would have heard when you were going through it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's balanced with, because I spent a lot of time trying to not get divorced. And that's, learning that point that no amount of skill is going to fix a poor partner choice, in the sense of, it was never going to work. It was never, right from the very beginning, it was never going to work. And nothing that I did was going to change that. But I think it's important for me, recognizing that, I was always a good person inside. Yeah, some of my behaviors weren't, could have been better. But as a good person, that you are a good person inside, that you are, if you're recognizing that you've got things to work on, then you're a good person. You're not a sociopath. You're not a narcissist or anything like that, as much as you might get a whole bunch of that stuff thrown at you. You need to recognize, and there's a poem called Man in the Mirror, not the Michael Jackson song. There's another one, and it goes along the lines of, if you can look in the mirror and like yourself, which comes back to, I was talking about with my dad, then that's all that matters. And that's what you really need to find, that in your source of strength, that you are a good person, that you, if you like yourself, it doesn't matter what gets thrown at you. You can work through it and keep moving forward. So yeah, it's a challenging one. There's a lot of different dynamics in that. You mentioned about, most of the divorces initiated by the women. That's something I think we need to change. That, if your relationship is not working and you are going to break up, and a number of people, wise people, told me that. They said, play it with a straight bat. Don't, if it's not working, the sooner you get things in terms of the law, like some orders as far as parenting, those kind of things, the easier it's going to be. And we try and delay that. And you'll know from Yoel as being a lawyer, if it's in writing and you've got it per the law, you've got a lot more legal standing than if you don't. And certainly when you're talking about abductions and things like that, where people deny access, all that kind of thing, it's almost impossible to deal with if you don't have some sort of legal framework to rely upon. And without parenting orders, you don't. It's, well, certainly in Australia, you don't. I don't know what the laws are like in all the other countries, but so yeah, what number one is, like yourself, look in the mirror and recognize that you are a good person, and you should do that regardless, no matter what your life is like. You should like yourself. You are an amazing human being. Take time to help others would be the other thing I'd put in there, and formalize things legally as soon as possible.
Love that.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Before we, wrap up here, do you want to talk about the Family Peace Foundation at all, or any of the other things that you're doing, or where we can follow you, or people can reach out to you?
Yeah. The Family Peace Foundation I was asked to set that up. That was something back in 2014. So I was appointed as CEO to set that up. And what I found in doing the research there, that in this space of relationships, that kind of thing, there's not a lot of areas where you can get help. Like by comparison to what else is out there in other areas. For example, if you have an alcohol problem, where do you go? AA. It's global. It's and you can attend for, in most cases, free or just a nominal thing that you put forward. And not only that, in most areas, if you go to the AA website, and this is global, if you go to the AA website and put your address in within 7 kilometers of where you live, or was it 3.5 miles for people still following that thing? I like to go back in time too. I've got a Marty McFly time machine. I have 3 Lego DeLoreans, all built into 3 different configurations.
I've got a Back to the
coming back,
Future.
by the way.
Yeah, I've got a Back to the Future movie poster, so we're all in good company here.
Exactly.
There's a new DeLorean coming out, by the way.
Oh wow!
Yes, I've seen it. It looks awesome. And now I've got distracted as to where we were going with that. So where were we going with that?
You were talking about miles, 7 miles, 3 miles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So so for AA, there's within 7 kilometers of where you live, there's an AA meeting happening that night, so you can get support. If you want to be a better speaker in public or improve your confidence in that area, where do you go? I mean, Toastmasters now, and there's a number of organizations around the world that have a structure for going, okay, we need to provide help here, and they've got a structure that can be easily replicated. And that's how that works. I mean, AA meetings, then it's not like an organization where people are employed. It's people following a formula. So in what we were doing with the Family Peace Foundation, one of the things we did, we had a filming session where we had a lunch. So it was a high-class lunch at the founder's benefactor's home. He's very wealthy. Him and his wife are very wealthy individuals. And so we had this lunch, we had the table set up, we had a very classy dinner that was catered. And we had brought in 14 people from what we knew were strong families. Their relationships are strong. Their kids were, doing well, that kind of thing. We didn't bring in couples, just one person. We only had room for 8 people on the table, and we brought in 2 psychologists, very notable psychologists here in Australia, Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg and Sabina Reid. And so the psychologists asked these people about issues that happen in a family and how these people dealt with it. And what the aim was to film that and get some feedback, and use those little clips to share with other people so that they could learn from that. And then just little snippets could go on social media, go on the website, that kind of thing. Now, coming from a corporate background, because I was directing this, I noticed that the men were starting to do a lot of the talking. And having that corporate background, I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to get accused of men dominating the conversation. So the ladies that were off camera, I went to them and said, look, I'm a bit concerned that the men are doing all the talking here and they're dominating the conversation. And all the ladies, they all stood up and said, no, we never hear guys talking about this stuff. We're loving listening to what they've got to say. And I was like, light bulb moment. In the right environment, guys will actually talk about this stuff. And so that was one takeaway from that. The other takeaway from that was, I I called everyone up about a month later to ask for some feedback of what we did. And, if we were to do it again, how could we improve it, that kind of thing. What I wasn't expecting, and was interesting, that every one of those 14 people went away, organized their own dinner party to have these discussions with their friends. So it was like, okay, this is the, in the right environment, men will talk. Two, if you give people a structure in this space, they will go and do that. And that's where what I'm doing now, because the Family Peace Foundation has gone through a number of different iterations. It's not actually public at the moment, so they're doing some more work on it. Because my role was to set up, which we got it set up, and then some other people took over, and it sort of hasn't gone where they wanted to go. But I went away and I started, as you can see in the background, share.care, which share is strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. And when I was looking for the web name, I wanted .com, but that was taken. But .care was there, and that's even better. So I grabbed that. And strong, healthy, inspiring relationships, you'll know, Ben, from a marketing point of view, it's unique. I looked up in the dictionary, it wasn't a word. So I went, cool, that's a good marketing angle. Then after I'd registered everything, I did some more research. Apparently it's an Islamic word, but it means fountain of all wisdom. So it's like, that's cool.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's a win.
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's created, and what I did was I created, and from the research we did, there's 10 principles that create a strong. 10 seems to be a good number. AA is 10 rules, or the 10. There's 10. Was it 10 commandments in the
10
Bible?
commandments. Yeah.
Yeah. So
wait, wasn't
10
AA 12? Isn't it 12 steps, or what's the?
Oh,
10
maybe
rules?
it's 12 steps.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway,
At least 10.
I thought. Yeah.
At least 10.
I did. Maybe I've got that wrong.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not perfect. I'm a
Well,
good
exactly.
person, but I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
I make
and we're
mistakes.
definitely not mathematicians here, so close enough. But anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. From the research that I'd done in setting up the Family Peace Foundation, I came up with 10 principles that create a strong, healthy, inspiring relationship. The first one is responsibility. You're responsible for your own actions. In there, and we deal with things. One of the other principles is money, having a secure, having a secure foundation, because a lot of arguments the couples have are to do with money.
Yeah.
The 10th one is having a plan. So having a direction, not only because, and this is interesting, a lot of the couples that I know that are in really, the founder of the Family Peace Foundation, him and his wife and their family, they've got 7 children and I think 14 grandchildren. Every 2 years, they have a family meeting where they plan out the goals for the family. They've obviously got their own individual goals, but as a family, they have goals. So they actually have a board meeting where they plan this out. So that's where plan is in this. There's 10 principles in there, and it's on the share.care website, which is share.care. And I also said, I mentioned before, I rewrote the Knights Code. These are, and one of the first ones is that to laugh at yourself and not take offense at the opinions of others. Because how much of today do we go, oh, that offends me? Well, you can't, someone can't offend you. You can be offended. Someone, doesn't matter what anyone says to me. I'm not going to be offended by it. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. It's not my opinion.
Sticks and stones. Sticks and stones.
Yeah, that's what I grew up with.
Yeah, I say that to my kids now, and they don't believe me. And I'm like, no, really.
Well, and that's one.
Sorry, I was going to say, Dan, and also I think that was in Stephen Covey's in the 7 Habits. Eleanor Roosevelt said, right? Nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. I think it was
exactly. That's exactly right. And that's why that's one of the first, as far as the code goes. And that's on the share.care website as well. It's one of the key headings. This is the code. And then from there, I've also created a community hub where people can connect. Haven't really been promoting it yet because, but it's actually a social media hub designed. The business model behind that is no ads. Yes, product placement. Great. Ben, well done. But yeah, so it will never have any ads, but it has the ability for jobs to be posted there. So there's a whole section that's like a job post. We call it Seek Here. We've got there's you can post videos. You can have your own community group, which you can have a completely private group where no one can even see it there. You can post. There's an eBay section, so you can actually have sales. That there's a course section like a Udemy. It's all together in one hub that we've created. So that's something I'm working towards over the next next 10 years is to have this for people that actually want to be inspired moving forward without ads. I read Mad Magazine as a kid, and
Yep.
never ever had ads,
Yeah.
It's like, so it can be done. Because I hate ads. And how much stuff you see on YouTube where it's someone promoting some stupid crap that they've got, and then throw some ads in there as well to make it even worse. So that's
forgive
where,
us if
so
if our YouTube video ever has ads on your interview, but that will be up
We
to
are
you.
going to be, we are going
It's
to be calling
not-
Pringles when we're done here. So.
We're calling
Exactly. So that's one of the things that I've done now, and I'm actually working with some people around the world. One of the things I'm working on at the moment is as you're probably aware, in Afghanistan, women are not allowed to go to get education anymore. And I'm working with some people to help women be able to get education. So we're working on a couple of things around the world to do with that. And from the breakup perspective, provide, I'm working with a lot of dads, but it's not just dads, but how to to do things. And it's interesting how many things you can do that the lawyers don't do. They go, oh, this is just the process, and it's like, oh, you just need to accept that you're not going to get the kids. And it's like, no, that's not right. The court doesn't have that attitude. The court has its rules, as you'll know, Yoel. There's acts that it follows, and if you lay out your argument in accordance with with what's in the act, then you're making it. It's like an example a dad gave, which was great. He said, when you ask for a pay rise, you don't say I want a pay rise. You say, well, here's all the reasons I'm going to provide benefit, and justify why they should give you a pay rise. And you'll know yourself, Yoel, from having done this. You lay out your argument in terms of the various acts and case law, and make the decision easier for and you also note, and a lot of, like in Australia, a lot of people don't realize. They go, oh, the first hearing, the first return, or even directions hearing, the orders have to be by consent. Well, that's not true. The family law rules provide that senior registrar can make interim orders. They can't make final orders. They don't have the power to do that. But so if you lay out things to show that an interim order should be made, you can get orders at the very first return, because the registrar has the power to do that. But no one, very few people, I've never seen anyone do it other than me, to go, okay, this is senior registrar, here's the rule, the submissions, here's the rule, you can make this decision. You can make this interim order. This rule says you can. This is the act, parts of the act that say how it is, what guides that decision, and here's everything that fills in and shows that, and it works quite well.
Wow.
I don't know how you find the time, Damian. That's amazing. Everything you're doing.
Well, I told you, my dad told me don't get tired. So
amazing. You
or
and
as
Ben
I
have a lot
say,
in common. You and Ben.
I'll sleep when I die.
Yeah.
That was in a movie.
Okay. You can quote.
I don't know which movie,
like.
but it was in a movie.
Okay.
I don't know what the movie is.
I don't know. It's been in the movie of my life for a very long time.
I get all the sleep I need when I'm dead. It was in a movie. I can't remember which movie though.
Yeah, we gotta look that up.
So as opposed to Yoel, I don't really watch movies or remember movies. So
man.
I remember nothing. So it could be
well, that's
from a movie,
Einstein's
but I have no
principle.
idea.
Einstein said, "Why remember anything you can look up? It clogs up your thinking capacity." And
There you go.
Sounds like where you're at, Ben.
More or less, which is also why I wear the same shirt all the time, because why bother trying to figure that out too? So I guess I'm destined to be a millionaire, I suppose.
Barack Obama did that. I think it was Barack Obama. He had the same clothes all the time, because it was remove that decision-making process.
Definitely Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not sure about Barack.
Steve Jobs also, I think, the black turtleneck.
And Steve Jobs,
yeah.
That was a marketing thing, yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
Yeah, we've gone a little bit over time, but that's okay.
Right.
I've enjoyed
You're
it.
very generous with your time. Thank you. Amazing.
Well, I'd love to have more conversations if you're up for that. So and maybe you can round two, and maybe you can join us on the Share.care podcast as well. So
yeah, we'd love to do that. And
to.
Before you go, I would like to tell everybody to please tune in to dadtoquit.com, to Dad to Quit podcast, Too Dad to Quit, anywhere you want to find Instagram, Facebook. We just opened up a TikTok and Twitter. So please reach out. We do want to share your story. We are always looking for good guests that are relevant, that, if you know anybody who would benefit from this information, from these stories, please share it with everybody. And thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Available at toodadtoquit.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.